concentrating, Freddie. 665-2149.
Yeah, okay.
And let him hear what I say off the top.
Okay. Have you had a pill this morning?
Yeah.
Coming up next, Webster.
Good morning. A formal inquiry by the Vancouver Police will be held into the tactic used in the arrest of a suspect in an armed robbery in the 1300 block West 10th yesterday. Going to try and count the shots this morning, but first let's watch them at the normal speed. The initial police offhand estimate was that half a dozen or so shots were fired. I'll be talking this morning to Deputy Chief Tom Herdman of the Vancouver City Police on that topic and running the shots again in slow motion, about 2.5 times slower than the speed you saw just now. In more normal business this morning, we have Ritchie, former Tory MP who runs a strange little paper called The Conservative, a kind of independent conservative magazine. For active politics this morning, we will have the indomitable Pat Carney, Tory MP, Vancouver Centre, the woman whom many people, including myself, think sent McKechern into a wild flight of retreat in the first flurry over his incredible budget. And later in the programme, if his plane gets here, the finance critic of the Conservative Party in the House of Commons, Tory Day today, Michael Wilson, later in the programme. Now the break. I'm not about to condemn the Vancouver Police at the moment for their tactics in that shootout in West 10th yesterday. A man who was a suspect in a previous armed robbery had been flushed out after lengthy negotiations, and the allegation too that he was holding a young girl hostage. During the course of negotiations, it was said on the telephone that the man had 2 guns and a knife. When he came out, the police went rapidly into action. Here it is at normal speed. Sounded like free fire in Vietnam. But of course remember that when you're firing SSG from a shotgun, in an enclosed space of any kind with walls behind you, the reverberations at a short distance are instantaneous and loud. However, as a matter of public interest this morning, many people are concerned, perhaps, that the police may have overreacted. Although I don't know, people who simulate guns run into more trouble sometimes than they might expect. But here is the same section of film. That first piece took 12.5 seconds. Here is the same clip taken by Bill Caesar of BCTV News and the other crews there at slow motion. And this gives you an idea of the delay involved and the spreading out of the shots, 32 seconds. And we can roll that slow motion now. A count on a VU meter seemed to indicate 24 explosions. 24 explosions, of which half may have been reverberations. On the telephone, I have Deputy Chief Tom Herdman. Mr. Herdman.
Yes, Jack.
How many shots? Have you any idea yet, just a matter of clinical interest, how many shots were in fact fired yesterday?
Yes, I know exactly how many were fired.
Oh. How many?
I'm not going to give that at this point, but I would suggest you're very close.
Yeah, that was rather interesting, putting it on slow motion and counting the reverberations just as an uneducated guess. Can you give me any of the background, however, to the fusillade, even if it was only whatever it was, maybe 10 or 12, why that was necessary?
Oh, no, as I say, you're very, very close. And I just got the information approximately 2 minutes ago, finally, as to the number of shots. Why it was necessary? Well, initially, I think you've probably given some out on the air, and I haven't heard your previous broadcast.
I merely said that a man who had been a possible suspect in a previous armed robbery had apparently holed up somewhere with a 14-year-old girl, and that you had been told, or the police had been informed during the course of the lengthy negotiations, that there was that the suspect was claiming to have 2 guns and a knife.
Okay, well, right through the whole situation, even to the point that you and your viewers have watched the picture there, our members, the Vancouver police members, believe this person still to be armed. We had no reason to believe that the guns, he didn't have the guns or he didn't have the knife, and that he, in fact, wasn't firing back at our members. So when he left, it was a result of a negotiation process for, as you've already said, some almost 7 hours. He wanted a van, and he wanted a van that he could escape in. He initially wanted to take the hostage with him. Mm-hmm. We negotiated this process to the point that we didn't allow him to take the hostage. When he did get in the van, at this point, what was facing the members of the Vancouver Police Department was a person who apparently was in such a state that he, to us, was capable of doing physical injury to the hostage, anyone else that might prevent him from leaving, that he was possibly armed, and we had every reason to believe he was, as others who were involved felt too. That as well as this, that if he had the van, that he would have a further instrument to do damage to the public. It was my instruction to the emergency response team leader and to the field commander, who is the ultimate person responsible for the incident, that we're just turning your monitor on, but I guess we better not.
Right.
That the vehicle had to be immobilized because of further threat to the public as a result of him driving the vehicle, and as I say once again, possibly armed with 2 guns.
Can I put a point to you there, Deputy Chief Herdman?
Go ahead.
Is it not now a cardinal rule of negotiations that you cannot tolerate anybody who is holding a hostage leaving with that hostage?
Absolutely not. There is no way then that we can control the situation. The situation is out of control. We have a hostage then who we can't protect or can't negotiate for or can't do anything with.
And the man had no guns, but they could have been in his boots or anywhere.
Yes,
Had
we
there
had every
been
reason
guns.
to believe that they could have been in his boots, that he had both the van, which was an extremely dangerous weapon, and he believed himself to be a race car pursuit driver. He believed that by getting the van, that he in fact was going to leave us and prevent capture because of his expert skill at the vehicle. That then would have meant another person.
At least the car was immobilized very quickly and very succinctly. Would it be possible for you to confirm to me what I heard elsewhere, that you had fears that other hostages might be taken in different parts of that area?
We had a concern during the negotiations that he might, well, there was a suggestion that he might do damage, in fact kill or throw portions of the hostage out of the building. That in order then to protect himself, that he might go to another portion of the building and take further hostages. Now, we could have prevented him going by killing him if he did do it. But at that point in time, if he had have taken the young girl with him, the decision that would have faced policemen then was, would they have to kill the young girl if she were a screen in order to protect the other 4 hostages?
Any apologies for the action, Deputy Chief Herdman?
What occurred?
Yeah.
I have not seen everything that occurred, and I can't go over everything specifically. Generally, what happened was my instruction. Generally, what happened I concur with, and generally what happened prevented the public from further injury and threat. I am pleased that what they did was a professional approach to a very difficult problem.
There will be an internal department inquiry, as in the case of all discharge of any firearms by the police?
There always is, in a shots fired situation, a complete review by the police, having to be reported to the Board of Police Commissioners, subsequently to the Police Commission, which is responsible to the Attorney General. If there is any indication of criminal involvement by anyone on any part, it's reviewed by the Crown Counsel, and then subsequently, if there are any disciplinary concerns, regulations broke, that is dealt with internally.
My thanks to you, Deputy Chief Tom Herdman.
You're welcome.
Much obliged.
Bye.
Bye. I'll be back. Just a moment before you come back. Right, so I was going to take some phone calls on this, but it's a little bit early in the morning. I have some other business I must do. I may come back to phone calls on that later. Quite fascinating, the slow-mo version. And while Chief Herdman would not confirm our guesstimate, it seems we're pretty close, that about 12 shots were fired, and the rest you heard were in all probability reverberations from the nearby buildings. Down to politics with Ron Ritchie after the break. Ron Ritchie, a former Tory MP, is a different kind of Conservative, I think. I have no recollection of knowing that there was a magazine put out, a leaflet put out called The Canadian Conservative. By Mr. Ritchie, you used to be an MP.
That's right.
So you're now on the outside looking in.
Well, I'm very active in the party, but I have no official status.
Now, this Canadian Conservative, is this the formal organ of the Conservative Party?
Oh, not at all. It's my own personal attempt to stimulate some debate and discussion about the philosophy of the party, the directions the party thinks the country should go in.
And the party leadership?
You won't find anything in there about the party leadership.
Isn't that the greatest single crisis that the Conservative Party has from time to time, even though you're top of the polls just now, is a crisis of confidence in the leadership?
Well, there's enough talk about the question to have to say that it is a problem at the moment. That's not to suggest what the right answer should be. What I'm trying to do in the Canadian Conservative, though, is something that is a longer term, addressed to a longer term need, and that is to stimulate thought about what this party should stand for, how it should put itself across to the public as a proper answer to the needs of the country.
Now, I was talking to one of the big noises in Canada yesterday, a fellow by the name of Adam Zimmerman of Noranda.
Yes.
A $6 billion business or something incredible. And he was, to say the least, a trifle pessimistic about the industrial future of this country. You say here, quite bluntly, that Canada is in decline.
Yes, I do.
Regardless of who is in power, eh?
No, not regardless of who is in power. It's only in decline because of what we've been doing for quite a few years in government, partly because of some attitudes we have in the country that need to be rethought. We can come out of decline. Everybody says we have the potential, we do, but there are lots of countries in this world that have nothing, even though they have lots of potential, if they mismanage it, and we've been mismanaging it for a decade.
All right, it's kind of tragic, isn't it?
It is tragic. It's the most it's not much wonder people are angry as they are today. We haven't had any...
How many are angry, though?
Oh, in my experience, a very great many are angry.
Are we not,
ordinary
though?
people who didn't take much interest in politics.
Yeah, but looking on the world scene right now, are we not still, by and large, compared to any place in the world, an affluent nation with reasonable conditions for 80% of the people?
That's a good statement, but we're a long way from what we could be for all of the people.
Well,
We haven't had any real growth in this country, Jack, we're into the 5th year now, and the budget forecast says that we're not going to have any for the next 5. We're going to have 2.5% or less real growth. That means per person, nothing.
You're a traditional Tory, right? An orthodox Tory.
Yes.
Do you agree with the philosophy once expressed by Churchill in a by-election in Britain in 1922? I think it was in Dundee. I wasn't politically conscious at the time, but my father used to tell me. Churchill said in that, and he was defeated, what this country needs is 12 men for 10 jobs. We need, in effect, he was saying, we need the economic pressure of a surplus of labor so that capitalists could force down the labor and make more money.
Well, if that's traditional conservatism, I don't agree. That's a long past view. We do need people to want to work, and a lot of people want to work right today who don't have a chance to work. We've got a very high unemployment level in this country, higher than we need have.
It's a million. Is that a real million, do you think, or is it...
Oh, I think it could be more than a real million. I think there are some people who aren't registered now because they've sort of given up. And there certainly are people who've come out of the labor force who would be in it if there were more jobs available.
All right, looking at the country politically.
Right.
And forget the Liberals if you like. But, I mean, you ought to give Trudeau credit for many things, haven't you?
I give him a lot of negative credit for things.
Do you give him credit for any single thing?
Oh, he hasn't done everything wrong, I suppose, but I don't have anything standing out in my mind that's going to go down in history as a positive for the last 10 years.
Who deserves the credit for the final return of the Constitution in whatever form, which is now pretty certain, I think, to Canada?
Well, Trudeau took the initiative, but there really was no opposition to the Constitution being brought back to Canada from any quarter that I know of.
I thought you'd have given Joe Clark credit. He was the guy who pushed him into the Supreme Court.
That isn't the question you asked me. Joe Clark deserves a lot of credit. He, as you say, not only pushed it into the Supreme Court, but he took a stand on what the nature of that Constitution should be way back in October of 1980. And without him, we wouldn't have what we have today.
Do one more short segment with Ron Ritchie after the break. Ron Ritchie, who finances the Canadian Conservative?
Well, I've been financing too much of it for my comfort out of my own pocket.
But so you're an independently wealthy, true blue, Bay Street Tory.
If I have to keep on financing this, I won't be much longer. No, I'm not independently wealthy.
You know,
I work.
If we can just, you used to be Imperial Oil.
Yes, I did, until 8 years ago.
Yeah, and I've interviewed you 20 years ago or more.
Yes, you have. When I was BC manager back many years ago.
Isn't it a shame, though? I mean, the one Tory leader with whom one had an instant rapport off camera or off microphone was Stanfield.
Oh, he's a great man.
And you were his principal parliamentary assistant?
I was his chief of staff, yes.
Wasn't it a pity that he just didn't go once more? Couldn't go once more. I'm not saying he chickened out or anything, but he had other problems and he couldn't go once more, could he?
I think at one point, about 8 months before the 76 Leadership Convention, he could have been persuaded to go. It would have taken a party appeal. Who can tell what would have come out of that? He is a very, very fine statesman-like person.
He was in town for the John A. MacDonald dinner, wasn't he?
I didn't know that. No, I didn't know that.
You weren't invited.
No,
I wasn't invited.
No, I wasn't.
You're perhaps too true a blue Tory, and I'm perhaps the other way. Now, Economically, I don't want to hammer you and talk to you about the budget because Carney's here.
Yes.
Ms. Pat Carney is here. But economically, I don't see anything going to lifting us up by our bootstraps in the foreseeable near future, do you?
In the short term, it's not a good outlook no matter what happens. But what's more important is that we don't throw away all this potential we have. We have to get growth going in this country again, and the biggest obstacle to growth, as far as I'm concerned, is government. The degree and kind of government intervention we've had in the last few years, and particularly the last 2 years.
Now, look, I continually am castigated by very decent people who work for governments, and I generally tar them with a very broad, obnoxious brush, you know, index pensions, the usual, I suppose, anti-civil servant reactionary line, which is easily and glibly said. But we can't blame the civil servants for the troubles in this country now, can we?
No, I'm talking about a system. Any system which involves government too extensively in detailed economic decision-making, any system which discourages savers and investors by destroying their confidence, that kind of system, not the individuals, that kind of system slows down the economy.
Have you taken a position on balanced billing or extra billing by doctors?
No, I haven't.
Would you? Would you ban, as I would, any additional billing by doctors so that we still have a national scheme where medical treatment is a matter of right and not one of money or privilege?
I think, like many other things, it's a matter of degree. If extra billing became widespread, then that would be destroying the system. We've had extra billing in some parts of this country for a long time without it becoming very extensive. I don't think that matters. You can't have perfect systems.
No, I agree that. Well, of course, you think the welfare system is abominable and UIC is far too generous, don't you?
Oh, UIC has been reformed a great deal. I think it went through a period of when it was not just a question of generous, it rewarded the wrong kinds of activity. No, we need unemployment insurance, but it needs to be a proper unemployment insurance system, and it's much closer than it was.
You were wartime prices and trade board.
Yes, I was.
Time for controls again?
No.
Never, ever?
Almost never ever. No, you can't say never ever, but we can't hope for anything good at this time from wage and price control.
Now, you were on the Glasgow Commission too on government reorganisation. I can barely remember the recommendations except something about Shaughnessy Hospital out here. Were any of the Glasgow Commission recommendations for efficiency? That was the civil service, wasn't it?
It was the organization of the federal government, yes, and its operation. Yes,
you weren't very successful.
Well, we weren't because the thing that's happened, in my view, that's changed it, is that government has been made bigger and bigger and bigger. And a lot of the recommendations of the Glasgow Commission were, in fact, approved. Some of them worked out pretty well and some didn't.
All right, one final little segment. What is the leadership position in regards to party review? Just to refresh my memory.
Well, the present position is that there will be a general meeting of the party in January of next year, at which time, under the Constitution, there will be a vote on whether a leadership review is needed. That's the current position.
That's an open vote of delegates.
That's a secret vote of delegates.
A secret vote of delegates.
That's correct.
Do you think you'll ever get over your tradition of eating your young?
I don't think we eat our young, Jack, any more than, say, the Labour Party in England or the UK Party in England.
Agreed.
I think it's I think there's a myth about the PC Party in Canada eating its young.
We'd be totally wrong to change horses now in midstream, wouldn't it?
Well, and I think the caucus and Joe are the ones who make that decision. If they don't decide otherwise, we're going to go through with this review, which is a normal constitutional part of the party's procedure.
In Quebec. You should be telling me that we're back where we were in 1968 now over Quebec under Trudeau's policy.
Well, in some ways, we are. I am optimistic enough to think it isn't quite as serious, but certainly more problems have been created than solved.
And you're looking for money from wealthy Tories for the Canadian Conservatives?
No, anyone who receives it, they don't have to be wealthy.
How much? I mean, do you sell it?
No, I don't sell it. I've been debating whether, but you have to find out whether people like it before you can sell something.
Good. My thanks to you, Ron Ritchie.
Thank you very much.
Next we'll turn on True Blue Tory Day to Patsy Carney. Thank you very much, Ron.
Thank you.
Therefore, get off.
Since the budget was introduced on Thursday night, construction has stopped, just ended, on 3,200 rental units worth $500 million from St. John's, Newfoundland to Vancouver, throwing 3,400 people out of work.
I can't remember the last time I was annoyed at Pat Carney. It was something over railway tickets or plane fares or something, wasn't it?
It was a technical error, so let's leave it at that.
My error or yours?
Yes, you were very bad-tempered. And you can be bad-tempered, but you can't be bad-mannered. It's not
I've
allowed.
never been bad-mannered in my life.
You were bad-mannered to me.
On the
Bad-tempered?
air?
Yes. Bad-tempered, I can take bad-mannered.
Bad-mannered?
No. Right.
What
Terrible.
did I do that was bad-mannered? Tell
You
me.
were just rude to me.
I was rude.
Yes, you were.
You
My
could-
daughter complained. She phoned down and said, Jack Webster was rude to you on the air, and he shouldn't do that to you.
I was very nice to your mother, though.
Oh, that's great, yeah. Everyone's nice to my mother. She deserves it.
You know, she was great. Pat phoned me up one day and said, you got to put my mother on. She's written a book about China. And I thought, oh, she's old. Somebody's old mother has written a book about China. What was it called?
Foreign devils have light eyes.
She came on here and she entranced me totally.
Yes.
And
She's
it was-
become a celebrity in her own right. I took her in Ottawa.
What's her
to
first
the-
name again?
Dora Carney. I took her to the opening of the Hong Kong War Vets Museum exhibit, and the Chinese photographer came over to me and said, Miss Carney, is that your mother? And I said, yes. And he said, is that the author of Foreign Devils Have Blue Eyes? And I said, yes. And he said, can we take her picture? So I said, yes. So she was the star, and I had to stand on the sidelines.
I'm sorry Wilson isn't here right now so we could hammer into the budget.
Well, he is flying in from Regina. We're all on the road this week in our Christmas break.
As
There's
long as you're
about-
not. Oh, no, see, you're making me
Honest,
hold back
I
on my
know.
remarks.
I know exactly what
You
you're
know
gonna
what
say.
I was going to say.
Yes, yes.
And I'm not going to say it.
Thank goodness.
But way back in Confederation year, what year was that, 67? Remember 67?
It was one of your better years.
Centennial year.
Okay.
And I get invited to make the speech on 100 Years of Canada at Kitimat.
Right. And I was the guest of honor. You were the star speechmaker, but I was the guest of honor.
And big auditorium somewhere in Kitimat.
Yes, July 1st day. 34
And-
different nationalities in Kitimat.
JP or PJ? What is
JP.
it? JP. Delightful little boy. Baby, you should see him now. He was about 3 or 4 then, wasn't he?
He was 2.
2. And I get up there on the stage to make a good, solid, semi-humorous speech to all these people. And who shouted me down? JP.
Right.
2 years of age, sitting beside you in the front row.
And you threatened.
Margaret on the other side.
You threatened to evict him at 2.
I said, shut up or I'll throw you out. Do you remember that?
Well, I say that all the time. Now he's 16 and 6'4". I say all the time, shut up or I'll throw you out.
I shook hands with him on the ferry and he crushed, I'm going to sue him for the damage to my arthritic joints. Now, down to politics. I've praised you, I made no bones about it, because you were the guy who sent McKechnie into, could you say rampant flight?
Not as rampant as we're going to in the future. But we got him on the first retreat.
How's the budget now?
It's in a state of complete uncertainty. I think the best description of the budget is Herb Kaposi's, who says, you know, this budget treats as a cure for no known disease.
Yeah.
It has 3 bad features still. One is it's retroactive. It's changed the rules of the game at half-time. So whether you're a working person who has, say, a dental plan or a health plan negotiated with your employer, where your employer pays the benefits, you now find that you think you're going to be taxed on it, but you're not sure. Or if you're a businessman and you're trying to figure out this is January, and you're trying to figure out what your real payroll costs are this year, you can't figure that out. If you're a senior citizen or someone who's selling a business to retire, you no longer know for sure exactly what's going to happen to your retirement income. You know it's going to be less, but you can't really plan that. So the fact that the rules have been changed and decisions made is terrible. And the other bad feature, which people will realize, is that it's a real cash grab. For the first time, the federal government is going to take money from you and me before we get it. And the best example of this is taxing life insurance policies, where people will be taxed on the value of their whole life insurance policy, even though they don't have the money, and it's a lot of money.
They haven't withdrawn that?
No, no.
Or is it not clear if they have?
No, they say they're going to have continuing negotiations, but in the meantime, the life insurance industry thinks that, you know, half its workforce could be unemployed, but doesn't know.
Because we are by definition, Canadians are the biggest buyers of life insurance per capita in the world.
Right, and it builds all the shopping centers, and it builds, you know, the major...
Let me try and get this clear. I don't believe in endowment policies at all. I don't believe in whole life policies, but many people do.
Right. Actually, 78% of the people who buy whole life insurance policies earn less than $25,000 a year.
So we buy the whole life and policy, which has got a term element, and the rest is a form of investment, isn't it?
It's considered not really investment, it's protection. It's what you should do is have someone from the whole life insurance policy on here to explain the
No, I just want to get the one point. Yeah. Are you telling me that it still is in the budget, it seems, for these continuing negotiations?
Yeah, they're still talking about it.
That if I've got a policy in which I pay X dollars a year, which builds up an investment value, that they will tax me on that investment before I collect it?
Right. And I'll give you the figures that they've given us.
Gotta be joking.
If you buy, that's what people say to us. They say, how can they do this? But there's something
They
even
haven't
worse.
got the money.
The life insurance people tell us that if you're, say, 25 years of age and you buy a policy for $25,000,
Right.
and you're in a 36% income bracket, which is reasonable, and your premium is going to be $237 a year. By the time you're 61, you will be paying in that year something like $2,600 tax. Your premium will still be $237, but you'll be paying $2,600 cash. When you're 71, you'll be paying something like $5,600 cash, although you don't have the money. It's and
You
what's
mean tax on the increased value of the policy?
yeah, and you don't have the money. I mean, if you die, your widow has it, or presumably if you cash your policy and you pay tax anyway, but you would be paying tax on money you don't have. And it is a concept that we have to fight. It's called the concept of deemed income. For instance, now you won't believe this because people will have a hard time believing this, but we as taxpayers pay people in the Department of Finance to figure out how much we should be paying taxes on the equity in our homes. And the argument is, if I own my home and it has a market value, a rental value of $1,500 a month, I should be paying tax on that $1,500 a month.
But you're buying the house through,
It doesn't matter. They
with
say,
your mortgage payment.
well, they say maybe the mortgage is only $1,000 and it's really got a rental value of $1,500. That's a tax benefit to me. And the tax department has figured out.
See,
Yeah, they figured out.
They haven't done it.
Yes, they figured out that the government of Canada is losing $4.5 billion a year because they're not taxing us on what they call the deemed value.
No, let me stop you there. I
No?
can understand it. No, I don't want to confuse. I just don't want me to get confused. I saw that piece in the budget when he was havering on about $47 billion in personal taxes, personal income not taxed.
Right.
I understand what you're saying. A renter earns money and pays tax on it to rent his house.
Right.
A home purchaser earns money and pays tax on it to pay his mortgage.
Right.
He has an equity build-up in his house,
Right.
all being well.
These days you can't be
These
sure.
days, and are you telling me that they have a firm plan to say, okay, Joe Blow, your house would rent you own the house, you're buying it, it would rent at $600 a month. We're going to tax you on $7,200 a year?
Yes, that's what that is. Now, when you say the firm plan, they have done the numbers on that. They have developed the statistics and the policy for that. In the insurance area, they have a firm plan. It's in the budget, and it's called taxing you on the deemed increase in value of your life insurance policy.
And
it's
now
gonna
you're
kill
saying
people.
that they have made preparations, but not yet done it, to tax you on the deemed value of the rent they
Right.
don't pay because you're buying your house.
Right, and
People will be out with shotguns.
well, I know, but it's a philosophy Canadians have never accepted, and the philosophy is that all money really belongs to the state, and that anything, any deduction that you have, or any exemption that you have, is what they call a tax expenditure. And there was a piece in the province today that puts this out very well, Bill Wilson's piece. Any money any money you keep in your own hands, the government views as an expenditure of the government in that they didn't collect it. It's a terrible, terrible, and it's through this budget over and over again. The other terrible area is in in the cash grab of people who sell their businesses or their farms and have to pay the whole capital gains tax before they get the money. I mean, people come to me and say, last night someone said my parents have a little business in the Caribou, and you know, that's their retirement plans.
Yeah.
They want to sell it, and then they're going to retire off their income. And now they won't be able to pay the capital gains tax. They simply won't have it. So it's
Take
a terrible, terrible...
Take a break while I take my breath.
Thank you.
You're very depressing this morning.
Well, I can even be more depressing if I want.
Your hairdo?
Yes, what about you?
No, I need
Lady Claire all on the sides there? At least mine's natural.
We shall go to a commercial break.
I.W.A. is one of the
Pat Carney, I want you to continue with your budget analysis.
layman's analysis of the budget. Okay.
You're a lay person. Don't say layman, that's sexist.
I'm sorry, I'm too old for that.
Layperson's analysis of the budget. We did the piece on life insurance. We did this incredible philosophy which said what the figures are. Is there anything else? What British civil servant did they import from an ex-Labour government to write this budget?
It was I think it was a Harvard civil servant. I'll tell you another unfair one, and I have to do this because we're about to see a hard sell on the budget. They're going to use our tax dollars to buy ads in the paper and ship McKechnie around the country to tell us...
He doesn't come to West Coast.
Yes, he's due to come to Vancouver to tell us how wonderful the budget is and how good it is for us.
Well, we'll try and get him.
Okay, he hasn't been showing up in the House of Commons. He's been averaging 2 days a week out of 5 to answer questions in question period. But they argue, the department argues that this concept of forward averaging. Now, it's important because you have to know, most people, a lot of people, when they sell their farm or their business, in the past have used the money to buy something called an income averaging annuity. So they're buying a plan which pays them out their income over 10 or 20 years. Okay?
And they're able to deduct that money and only pay tax on the receipts from the income averaging annuity.
Right, and as they draw their money down, then they pay tax. So the tax is collected. That's out. That's finished. That's finished. Anyone who was in that business is now out of work. They brought in something called a forward averaging annuity system, which is that, say you make, you sell your Salt Spring farm and you make, say, $100,000, and it's not your principal residence, which I know it isn't. You have to pay tax on that off the top. You just pay tax off it in your income. And then next year, if you don't make that much money, you can claim a tax credit back and collect some of that money back from the government. Of course, you don't earn interest on it, But what's worse is that if you die, Margaret will lose all the advantages of that. The spouse does not benefit from the ongoing aspects of that. So a lot of people who set up their retirement plans to try and protect the surviving spouse are going to find that any money they have is taxed in the hands of the surviving spouse. And it's even worse than that. The Canadian Consumers Association has said this budget is, quote, outrageously unfair, unquote, to seniors. Because most seniors, of course, have already made their plans. I mean, they're not in a position to alter their retirement.
Are there any good things? I mean, there were a lot of loopholes.
Oh, well, let's discuss your suit. Now, well, you're talking about loopholes. A lot of television personalities...
By the way, just a social note. Why I always wear a blue suit is I've got 4 of them, and I switch back and forward. They all look the same. It's not the same suit I'm wearing all the time.
Okay.
Because I look best in
a lot
blue.
of stars, yes, a lot of television stars like yourself get clothing allowances. Now, I'm not going to ask if you do, but I know some people in this station get clothing allowances. And I don't think you pay tax on those. To your knowledge, do you pay tax on your clothing allowances?
I don't know the details.
Okay. Well, there's some argument that that kind of perk should not be, should be closed, that should be taxed. But it's very hard to draw lines. For instance, if you, the Board of Trade told us this yesterday, if you are working, say, in Farrell, in Yukon, and I know you have a lot of viewers in Yukon, you would be earning, say, maybe an average of $38,000 a year. In order to pay you enough money to compensate you for the higher cost of housing, the housing subsidy that your employer gives you, your winter clothing like your parka and that you get, The travel ticket you get out so that you don't go cabin fever, you don't get
Cabin
cabin
fever.
fever. You would have to earn $18,000 a year more on your $38,000 just to have the same take-home pay. And that, of course, both the BC
Are you
Federation of
telling me
Labour,
if I'm up in Faro
if they
and
change
I'm
this,
coming down to Edmonton or Vancouver for a little bit of a vacation, they tax me on the ticket?
well, in many northern sites, people get a free trip outside. When I lived in the north, you know, I had to give my employees a free trip outside, and the government does. That's just to get them, you know,
And
to
that
get
would
them
be a
back.
deductible business expense for the employer.
It's a deductible expense for me as an employer, it was. But under the budget, there was a move to tax these as benefits. You see, it's a deemed benefit again.
Is that firm yet?
Well, yes, that's in the budget. That's on page, you know, page 18 and 19. They talk about the employee benefits. No, I'm sorry. Here we talk about travel passes, employer contributions to private health services and dental plans, and taxing the full value of board and
Well,
lodging.
they've given us a lot to double talk about that. For instance, I tackled somebody.
No, I think they're going to do it. They've delayed it for a year. Judy Arola, who's the Minister of Mines,
she-
fought that terribly.
Yeah, the classic case, of course, is Chrétien and Jack Munro,
Right.
where they made a deal a number of years ago when Munro flipped his gasket that they were going to tax them on the
Right.
benefits of room and board, for which they only pay, I don't know, $2.50 or $5 a
No,
day.
they are going to do that. That's on page 19 of the budget papers.
No.
Yes,
But
they
I mean,
are.
that actual cost to the employer of feeding a man well, as they do in isolated camps, might be $50 a day.
$45.18 for one operator, I know, mining operator.
$50 a day times, we'll say, even 30 is how much a month? $1,500 a month.
Well, the I.W.A.
And
Now,
that's-
let's make sure that we understand this.
Yeah.
This is the case of somebody who is probably running a residence here in Surrey. The wife and the kids are back in Surrey or Richmond or in Vancouver. And he is working or she is working at a logging camp or a mining camp, you know, in order to earn their income, or a construction camp, okay? And they are getting room and board at the work site, which is a value maybe of $2.50 a day or $3, which is now valued. The budget implicitly says, clearly states that they are going to be taxed on the full value of that room and board. And the I.W.A. has worked out that for every logger in the BC coast will have to pay $18 a day in tax. Now, that's not what the income they'll have to earn. They'll have to pay $18 a day in tax extra just for the privileges of living in that camp and getting, you know, room and
Is
board.
that effective now,
That is...
in the
no,
new year?
Yes. It's when these budget, actually they can impose this any time. That's
But
what
don't they realize that this would cause industrial chaos?
No, McEachran says no. He says that he denies it's anti-business. We heard
It's
yesterday.
anti-worker.
Yes, I'm here, as you know, heading up a task force who are hearing representations from people on this. And the I.W.A., who's already got something like 1/5 of its workers out of work, has calculated these figures. I met a man yesterday who says he pays the mining operator, he says he pays, I think it's his students, $45 a day, and the value of their room and board is $46 a day. So this summer, instead of paying tax on $45 a day, they'd have to pay tax on what's 45 and 46?
91.
$91. Well, I mean, who can do that?
Imagine the negotiating chaos this will cost.
Both the BC Federation of Labour and other labour groups have told us that this will lead to the renegotiation of existing contracts. And the Board of Trade has told us that in many contracts there is a clause which says that if there's an increase in taxation, the contracts are...
Be open.
Yes, I mean, it was Senator Ed Lawson who told me that this budget just overturns every contract in BC.
Yeah,
and if you have to add those costs in, Jack, it is inflationary. I mean, you know...
But I want to get this quite clinical again if I can. I'm just trying to get it clear in my mind.
Right.
Arola's going to be here soon.
Well, poor Perot.
But
he's
that,
gonna-
Arola, I said.
Oh, Arola, yes.
No. That plan, I was well aware of that at budget time and shortly thereafter and whatnot. But I had got an impression, perhaps a wrong one, that this had been hoisted too.
I think for specific the loss of northern allowances which is a specific subsidy given to northern employees, is being stood over for a year. But this budget paper says that the tax law will be changed effective January the 1st, 1982.
They can, of course, water
Yes.
it if they want to, can't they?
Yes, but that says January the 1st, 1982. I think I should, to clarify
Do you
that,
feel, okay,
some provisions come into the budget right away, the night it's announced. Other provisions come in at a specific date, and in that area, the finance minister has backed off some of the effective dates, like he's backed MERBs off from November the 12th to December the 31st. Now it's May the 31st or something. And then other measures require legislation, and they have to actually produce bills which have to be passed.
You've filled my head. You depressed me, as a matter of fact. I
Well,
thought
people
they'd
have
backed
told
off.
us, people have told us so many things. I didn't know any of this before I started, reading the letters and reading the briefs.
I can't remember who it was I tackled on that, because I was conscious of a deal made between Chrétien and Jack Munro when
No, but
Chrétien was
you're
in the
thinking
top
of
position.
northern allowances.
No, I'm thinking of camps in British Columbia.
Well, that's in this
Woodworkers
budget.
camps in British Columbia.
That's in this budget.
Guys up at Englewood or wherever they go in their camps nowadays. And if you're going to hit them with tax on the room and board, which is
Well, in a
part of the
depressed-
contract job at $2.50 a day, that's murder.
Now, possibly,
What are they trying to do?
well, they say that it's fair. They say that it's equitable. They say that everyone should
When
be
I had
taxed.
Trudeau on, he wouldn't even admit that they had made a mistake in MERBs.
Well, mainly, they just don't know what they're doing.
Do you think
This-
McKechnie knew what he was reading?
No.
Not a clue.
Well, they didn't even know until I stood up in the House of Commons
And told him about the MERBs.
that work had stopped on construction projects, and they admitted they didn't know. And I had up to 13,000 units that were being shut down and thousands of people out of work. Then McKechnie got up and said, "Yeah, as a matter of fact, the honourable member is right, and we are going to back off that." But there are other provisions. I'm sure they don't understand the effect on senior citizens. I'm sure what I learned on this task force is that there are an awful lot of working people who borrow money to invest in an RRSP. And they borrow the money because they don't happen to have $3,500 in
Can they
February.
deduct that interest now? or
No, they cannot deduct their interest.
not? Hold your breath. Pat Carney, Tory MP, Vancouver Centre, making foul allegations that I once was rude to her on the air, but I'll forgive her. And she'll take calls after the break.
$50 a day if it's total cost of our people are in a 35% tax bracket, then their income tax goes up $18 per day. And it's ludicrous, and it's hard enough getting people to stay in camps now.
Well, what will that mean to your contracts? What will that mean to your existing contracts? Do you reopen them?
Well, we haven't got a reopener, but we will sure be raising hell with the industry. The frustrating thing is that the industry and ourselves are on the same position on this one. Perot will not answer the industry. McKechnie will not answer us. We've asked for meeting upon meeting upon meeting, and we can't even get a response from them.
I understand that about 1/5 of the I.W.A. workforce is already out of work. Is that
Probably a little more than that right now, Pat.
so? How can people pay taxes if they're How can people pay taxes if they're out of work?
No, they can't.
What's going to happen to your health plans and dental plans?
Well, we're also scrapping about that. We negotiated them and the industry in good faith, and that's a benefit. At that point in time, now it's less of a benefit, and it just doesn't make sense.
It's been argued to me that in the future, people won't negotiate those kind of benefits, and that will mean that the public generally will be more dependent on government and government programs. I mean, if you don't provide for your own health plans, your dental plans, or pension plans, eventually you're just saying to the rest of the taxpayers, support me. Or
Okay,
pay.
Jack, much obliged. I'll tackle
you.
Perot and McKechnie as soon as I can, and Pat Carney will give you a call when she finishes the program.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Munro. What's that clump in the background? That's his cast.
Thank you.
Gibsons, BC. Ms. Carney?
Good morning, Jack. Good
Morning.
morning, Pat.
Good morning.
I'd like to say something about the Trudeau government in this budget. Is that I've been watching the Trudeau government for the last 12 years, and the way they've been
I think maybe your television sound is up a little bit.
Oh.
That
Well,
drives.
I'll get it. Anyway, the Trudeau government has been mistreating the Canadian public for the last 12 years. I'm glad to see this budget's come in at last because maybe it will drive the Canadians into voting for someone who can actually run the country as opposed to someone who can win elections.
And of course, that's our party, the Conservative Party.
Beg your pardon?
That's our party, the Conservative Party.
I'm
that can run the
NDP
country.
myself.
Well, our chances of running the government are better than yours at the moment.
Well, give them a chance.
No, give us a chance. We've earned it.
We've had it.
No, we've earned it. We're the ones who are fighting this budget.
Well, you mean that broadband isn't?
Not as effectively as we are, to be perfectly candid.
But when he goes on a cross-country tour, the media trail around after him.
Well, they're trailing around after us. We're
Oh,
getting
they
great
are.
coverage, yes.
Is
Great
it because you have a larger power structure than he does?
No, I think we have more talent.
Anyway, at least the NDP and the Conservatives are agreed on a number of basic injustices in this budget.
Well, the Conservatives don't trust the NDP on budget. It was the NDP who voted with the Liberals against the John Crosbie budget, which defeated our government, and that's the reason that we have the McEachran budget. So the NDP gets all sorts of credit for being the little red rump on this budget.
The little what?
Red rump.
The little red rump.
John Crosbie's phrase.
Oh, he's going to be in here. I'm looking forward to that.
Right.
The little red rump.
Yes. And they can take all the blame for this budget, too.
Well, I don't agree with that particularly.
Well, you could have
okay.
had John Crosbie's.
Beg your pardon?
You know, we could have had John Crosbie's budget, and it certainly didn't have these inequities. All it had was an 18-cent tax
but
on
it
gas.
caused little pain along the way, and I saw that as a similar budget to the Trudeau budget.
Oh, even I wouldn't
In my
concede
opinion,
that.
that
Anyway, it's a good socialist measure if the Liberals bring in their apparent plan to tax homeowners on the equal rent they would have
Market
had to pay if they hadn't bought their house. And thank you from Gibson's. Are you a star on the Beachcombers?
no, I'm not, but I know
yeah.
him.
You haven't got a beard.
I do have a beard.
Oh, well, you can get a bit, Pat.
Everybody has a beard up here. It's cold, Jack.
Yeah, tell Bruno I sent you. Tell Bruno I sent you.
Okay.
Much obliged.
Do you know, there's another area
You've
that's
never been asked to play a part either, have you?
not in any drama. I've been asked to play lots of parts in politics.
Yeah, I've always been annoyed that nobody ever asked me to act.
No, you act all the time.
Do not.
Yes.
Except when I'm pretending to be rude to you.
Okay. There's another aspect.
Hold on, she's away again.
No, travel allowances. Travel allowances. We have heard yesterday on our task force from the international machinists and the aerospace workers, and also no MP can fly any aircraft in Canada without being lobbied by the flight attendants. But their concern is the loss of their rights to travel on a standby basis, around the country. And some people say that's good and some people say it's bad. But the union told us something very interesting. Those travel arrangements have never been part of a union negotiation. They're just something that is available for employees if they can use
pack.
it. Yes, if they can use it. But it's not part of a union negotiation.
Well, I always thought it was in a negotiation.
The machinists said no. And they say that if this measure stands, it will, of course, become a labor item, a negotiated item. And that, of course, they say is inflationary. Anything you add to the cost is inflationary.
And here we are watching across Sweden. I picked up a piece of gossip yesterday about the industry, which is forest industry. I didn't know, you probably did, that in Sweden, the industry unions negotiated an 8% increase. The government promptly devalued the krona, and Swedish pulp is now in a highly competitive position in relation to Canadians.
Right,
Because we're going, as you well know, we're always going for vast percentages.
right.
And we're pricing ourselves, or the Swedes are outsmarting us on both labour and management sides in the world pulp market.
That's one of the problems with this budget. Now, any government has the right to introduce a budget measure. But in this case, they have brought in this kind of budget, which is cash grab and which is anti-incentive and which is hurting business at a time when we are in our first recession in 31 years. I mean, you heard Jack Munro say how many of his union workers were out of work.
25%.
Yes, we have the highest rates we have nearly 1 million Canadians out of work. We have the highest rate of bankruptcies in the post-depression era. We have the tightest money supply since I can remember, and that is not the kind of economic climate that you crunch people. And I think we're going to have, a very rough time with this budget provision unless we can back them off.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Where's Michael Wilson?
Michael Wilson's plane, we've just been told, now won't get in until after your show time. We don't expect that he'll be here. He may make the last 10 minutes.
Ah, pity about that.
But the weather has been terrible in eastern Canada, as you know.
Been terrible all
Yes.
over the world.
We have 4 task force in the field this week. And so we have Tories in something like 16 cities listening to people and getting this kind of information.
Not
so
a nag, but who finances that? The party?
Party
The
finances
party?
it, yes.
It's not tax financed.
No.
It's only the Tories that can fly about in jet
no,
stars.
people send their
The
25.
Liberals who can fly about in jet stars.
Yes, no, the people who send in their $25 donations and their $10 donations, they're helping pay for this.
Mm-hmm. After the break. Very dangerous indeed.
Terrible.
Hey, Pat.
I think I've ruined your day.
No, you haven't. You've been very good and very lucid. And I'm not a member of the Conservative Party, and lots of your MPs are hard to understand. But on this particular occasion, you're really quite right. I think the climate, maybe it's me, I'm old now, climate has changed in the interest of people in relation to money. You have found that people are much more interested. In the good old days, you drew your wages, you paid your pay-as-you-go income tax, and you put what you could in the bank, right?
Right.
You bought a wee house.
Right.
What proportion of the working force, now that conditions are better, money is better, leisure is better in good times, are really involved in the kind of detail that you're talking about this morning?
If you add up all the people who are covered, who are covered by these kind of union contracts, and if you add up those who are employed by small business, which is the biggest job creator employer in Canada, and you add up all the senior citizens, I think you'll find that just about every Canadian is involved in this.
Okay, we just made a rough calculation. If they tax room and board, you pick a place.
Jaskatla,
In just
one of my favorite camps.
Okay. You'll have an additional income of $6,000 a year, on which you will be taxed at your proper rate for the privilege of living in Jaskatla during the weeks.
No, you have that wrong. You'll pay tax of $6,000 a year.
Yeah, it's $18 a day. You'll
Right.
pay tax of $6,000
That
a year
little
for the
T4
privilege of living in Bella Bella.
Yeah, that T4
Bella
slip will increase by $6,000 a year on, that you'll now pay the government for the privilege of living in
When do we
camp.
first see a Liberal, said Webster, looking up at the board? Serge Royal. He's the guy who flirted with separatism in the East, isn't he?
He was the chairman of the Constitution Committee. He
Smart, glib guy.
He likes antique clothes and things like that. I don't think he's a separatist. He's a very charming, very courteous man.
Flirted at one
Flirted?
time.
No, they suggest him as a future Speaker of the House of Commons when Jean Sauvé gets her well-earned reward as ambassador to the Vatican.
You say that with somewhat an ironic look on your face. When Jean Sauvé gets a well-earned reward as ambassador to the Vatican, has she been a good speaker?
She's been a good administrator of the House of Commons. I haven't been around long enough to say if she's a good speaker. I mean, I've only served in the House with her as speaker. But she's one tough lady when it comes to running the House of Commons, and she's causing a lot of waves in trying to cut costs in the House of Commons. When I first went there, I learned that the House of Commons didn't know how many employees it had. And she's managed to cut that situation.
How long have you been in the House?
2 years on February the 20th, 18th, when was the election?
Seems like you've been there for 20.
No, it just seems like that, John.
I know, that's what I said. It seems like you've
I'm
been
not
there
even
for 20.
pensionable yet, remember that.
Oh, you'll do all right with your pension when you get it. You'll be there 10 years, I suppose, in opposition.
Well, I'll have to be not in opposition.
Oh.
I'm sure we'll form the next government.
I don't see how you can avoid it.
Right,
Like Davy Barrett and Victoria.
possibly.
Go ahead, please.
Yeah, Jack?
Yes.
Okay, I got 2 questions. One is, how can I get a complete copy of the budget and all the amendments to the budget, or where can I write to get this information? I've been reading a lot in the province and the Sun newspaper because I get both, and I've been trying to...
Okay, where does one get a copy of the budget papers and the budget documents and whatnot?
The easiest way is to write to the Department of Finance in Ottawa. But I'm warning you that it's not going to tell you what you need to know. I mean, the budget papers consist of some documents. It has the budget speech, which doesn't tell you very much. It has the budget papers, which indicate the areas they're going to change. And then there is an announcement of those 17 changes that he made on December the 18th. But you will not be able to get a document that tells you precisely what it is that you're going to have to pay with any certainty. For a lot of that, you're going to have to wait till the legislation is presented to the House and passed. That's one of the reasons that so many people are uncertain about how to run their payroll this month, or how to set aside their taxes.
So we got more or less a government smokescreen.
Yes, not even see, one of the problems is McEachern passes, he introduces this budget, but National Revenue has to enforce a lot of it, and National Revenue doesn't even know yet what it is supposed to do.
Would you hold on a second, please? Is Steve prepared to go on the air? Are you there, Steve?
Yes, Jack.
Steve Wyatt is down at the Olsen trial, the man charged with the murders of 10 youngsters. The trial proceeding now for a few days in Vancouver. What happened this morning, please, Steve?
Jack, Olsen's lawyer, Bob Shantz, appeared in court first this morning, informed Justice Harry McKay that Olsen had decided to change his plea to guilty on all 10 counts.
Right.
They're in the courtroom is in the process now of reading Mr. Olsen all 10 counts of first-degree murder, and he is pleading guilty to all of them. The jury has just was brought in about 5 minutes ago.
And each time a charge is read out, does he stand up and is he asked, how do you plead guilty or not guilty?
He's standing up through the whole process, Jack, and as each count is read to him, he is pleading guilty.
When will he be sentenced?
We don't know for sure yet, Jack. Justice McKay is expected to adjourn for a while first and talk with the lawyers, and the jury will then be sent out. They're hearing the charges now.
I hate to ask you this. I should know this, Steve, offhand. It is first murder. It's the top murder charge.
Yes, first degree.
First degree murder. And has he pleaded guilty to all 10 yet?
Mike stayed through to number 5, and he has pleaded guilty to all 5 so far.
And Olsen's lawyer, Bob Shantz, informed Mr. Justice Harry McKay that his client had decided to reverse his plea and plead guilty to all 10 counts.
All 10 counts, that's right, Jack.
Steve, thank you very much for your report. Steve, give me a call after I get off the air. We'll go back in and see what else
Sure will,
happens.
Jack.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
BC TV News at noon hour, of course, and tonight we'll cover the Olsen trial and this dramatic development extensively, I have no doubt whatsoever, after the break. Steve Wyatt's report just before the break kind of throws one off one stride, doesn't it?
It's a very sad announcement when you think of the families involved and the people involved.
Oh, it's quite abominable, just awful. Anyway, in case you missed it, Olsen's lawyer first said this morning his client was reversing his plea to that of guilty, and as of this moment, the individual charges have been read out, and Olsen is pleading guilty, charge after charge after charge, and sentence, I should imagine, being first-degree murder, will take place sometime today. It's a long while since I've been in a criminal court in detail, but I remember quite clearly that on those cases, other cases, you have pre-sentence report, you have probation. I think it's a mandatory, automatic punishment, although the jury may have to retire and make a recommendation as to parole. It'll be 25 years on each, I presume, but they may have to make a recommendation on parole. I don't know that, so we won't speculate about it, Pat. We'll just wait and see what happens clinically in court. Back to Pat. Go ahead, please.
Good morning.
Morning.
I'd like to say good morning to Pat, your guest, and you, Jack. I wish we had more ministers who were as sharp and as keen as Ms. Carney. I think for yourself, Jack, if I could assimilate something, it's like sheep, your sheepdog, and your sheep herder. We, the John Does, or the Joe Blows, as you mentioned earlier, are the sheep. You got your sheepdog, he's loyal, the minister here, and then you've got your higher-ups who are your herders who tell the dogs what to do and how to act with your sheep. But regarding an economic and feasible working environment, if you don't provide nurturement for your flock, who are us Joe Blows, you're going to run them into the ground. Your product of wool and pork is going to, or should I say lamb, is going to go down. And if you
don't provide this nurture for your working class people, you're going to run the country into the ground too.
Yeah, yeah. It's a parable of the talents, really. I think he's telling us.
It's the most mixed metaphor I've ever heard.
No, he's going for the parable of the talents. You know.
Well, I know that quite well. But first of all, I'm not the minister, although I wish I were.
Oh, you're right. Sorry, I got your title wrong. But
she's an oompa.
I'm the deputy finance critic for the Conservative Party.
Right. Okay.
Thank you very much. So we do
One minute, please, if I may. I'm sorry about missing your title.
No.
I just wanted to say that we should have more people like her pulling the blinds back, showing what our government is doing, showing what our... It seems that politicians, they start with a good head, and then when they get into the system or get into the network of multi-corporate string pulling and...
Okay, I think we've got your message. Pat, would you respond, please?
Yes, I think it's important to remember that because, as I said earlier, the Liberal government is involved in the hard sell. You're going to see the big advocacy advertising. You're going to be told it's good for you. You're going to have the minister say, yes.
Millions?
Before the bills are even passed by the House.
Millions?
Yes, millions.
Okay,
Yes.
boy, I got to go. Must try another call.
Before the bills are even passed by the Parliament, and people won't know. You see, they'll read this ad that says that they're better off, and they really won't know because they don't get their tax form till next year, and it's going to be very confusing. Everybody knows in their own hearts how the budget affects them, and everybody knows it's bad news.
Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Pat.
Good morning.
My husband's a salesman. Do you have the details on this company car tax?
Right.
We have our own personal car, so consequently we do already pay a certain amount per month for the personal use of that car. But basically it is for running the business. And if it's in the driveway and we have to go shopping, that is the car we use. But we do have our own personal car. Will we be charged? You know how much we will be charged?
Yes, you will be charged. I can't tell you exactly how much. I think
I can.
It goes up to 5/6.
No, do you have two cars?
Yes.
You have one
we have our own personal car, plus my husband has the company car that he does. He works for a national company, and they supply the car.
Oh, yes. Well, if they supply the car and it's a leased car...
No, it isn't a leased car. The company owns the car.
Yes, they will be taxed partly on the benefit of that car.
I know the rate for the benefit of a car in certain circumstances has gone from 1% of the capital value per month to 2.5%, which means in effect 30% of the current value of the car is what you'll be charged for your personal use of the automobile, which is 30, and I think you'll find that's correct, 30% of
the total price of the car?
Of the value of the car will be charged against the driver, the person who uses it for personal purposes, as taxable income. Again, you're back to the old deemed taxable income.
Yes, here it is. I haven't got my glasses. It says...
Use mine. They won't look right, but try them.
Well, actually, it's not too bad. Yeah. Use of company automobiles. For companies who have a personal use of a car provided by an employer, the budget proposes tighter rules to ensure taxation of the value of this perk. While the law requires the taxpayer to report the value of this benefit in his tax return, it provides for at least a minimum standby charge to be added to income. That would be your husband's income. 12% of the value of the car if owned by the employer, or 1/3 of its leased cost. This minimum is the benefit actually reported, etc., etc. And then it says starting in 1982, this year, the budget proposes to increase the minimum charge to 2.5% per month, to apply it in all cases where personal use is made of a company car. And the result of that is going to affect people who make their living in sales, because again, the argument is being put to me by the Canadian Independent Association of Small Business, John Bullock's, I was the leading one, that, supposing you take your company car home because you're going to drive 50 miles the next day, there's some suggestion that that you'd have to pay tax on it. That would be deemed a personal use of a car. So
that's right.
You're going to pay more.
Well,
how much more?
I wonder if we could fight it when we have our own personal car that we can use.
Yeah, you can fight anything with the tax department as long as you follow the rules and declare the appropriate income. You can fight them. You can assess your use of the car and challenge them on that. You'll probably lose, but it can be done if you've got the time, the patience, and all the money in the world for accountants.
Yes, I suppose.
You know that as well as I do, Minnie. Thank you.
There's another area which are going to affect people like that. You know these, if you have a little $500 expense allowance that you get from your employer, according to this budget, you'll pay tax on that.
My goodness gracious me, 1. Or is it 4? Go ahead, please.
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yes, I was wondering, I spend my working time in the north, eh?
Right.
And so I suppose this budget as it's laid down is going to hit me right where it hurts.
Yes, it will.
Does that mean, as you know, I got to pay half as much again for prices as what they would pay down here for my gas, my oil, and everything else, eh?
Right, right.
And we talked amongst ourselves, you know, after work and that, and do you know what some of the people have been telling us, have been telling me?
No.
They've said that if they bring that budget in, they're going to close the whole bloody mine down, and, you know, they wanted to encourage people to go north.
Well, there's a lot of feeling that that will happen.
And the people, and myself included, I might add, Mrs. Carney. And,
Okay, we got the point, and I'm grateful, but we're constrained by the clock.
No, I lived in the Northwest Territories, as you know, for many years.
I think we both might well express, and I'm sure you agree with me entirely, the greatest sympathy for the families of these murdered children.
Right. It's very hard to keep your mind on the budget.
Yeah, it kind of throws you off your stride, doesn't it?
Did Steve tell you why?
No, we haven't got to that yet.
Well,
My thanks anyway. My apologies in regards to...
It's both on our minds.
We'll do it after the break. Thanks, Pat Carney, Vancouver Centre MP. My regards to Mr. Wilson.
Thank you.